Hello and welcome everyone back to another episode of
Not Fighting.
I'm Tyler Bishop and
I'm Jena Bishop.
That's right. And we're finally kind of back on a regular routine a little bit with the podcast. We had to take a little bit of a hiatus just because we had different things going on. And then last week you were in Houston for the UFC.
Yes, I was.
Not fighting, unfortunately.
No, but
Which is the name of the podcast?
Oh, no.
No, hopefully that's not why.
Man, I feel like maybe that's why I haven't been able to get a fight, because we named our podcast Not Fighting.
Yeah, and
so it's like a whole thing about like I'm not fighting the whole time.
Oh man, it'd make for a great story.
What do we do?
It'd be like it was like
we gotta change the name.
Yeah.
You have like a little
Always
water
fighting.
in your nose.
Oh.
Sorry, I just had to tell you.
Thanks, I appreciate it. That's how we gotta look out for each other.
Always.
We used to
know, that's how you know that somebody really loves you, is when they tell you have something in your teeth or that kind of thing.
We used to do the thing where I'd be like, "Is that a helicopter?" And I'd just like stick my nose up.
Yeah, you did that with your friend Jerry more than me.
Yeah. That's how you would know if you had a booger or not. You'd be like, "Is that a helicopter?" And they'd be like, "Nah, you're good." But yeah, so how was Houston?
I mean, Houston was hot and humid.
Interesting.
And
actually not at all.
But it was fun. It was fun to go, kind of be a part. You know, I got to do the Bellator thing once, like as a corner woman, and then I got
twice actually.
Yeah, but like, twice. But the second, and then, you know, get to be the behind the scenes, the UFC event, which I was telling somebody, I was like, I never even got to actually see the cage, like physically see the octagon in front of me, like at all, because I was always in the locker room or like the press conference stuff. They have it all blocked off. Yeah. So I never got to go like into the area where like they were actually fighting, which is kind of funny, but it was so cool.
It's a grand conspiracy from the MMA community to just keep you as far away from the cage as possible. I
know. They don't want me to fight. No, but it was cool. It was a good experience. I think it was fun, you know, because I had I was with two girls that were fighting on the card, and you know, Angela got to do like the press conference and stuff, and so it's kind of cool to see that. And then I kind of followed her around in some of her like little like press like media stuff, watching her like do all the interviews and photos and things like that. So it's just kind of cool to see like, you know, how it all goes down, and then you're like hanging out in the hotel the whole week, and just all the people are there, and everybody's like really accessible. And I think that's kind of a thing where like, you know, in martial arts, like especially in like mixed martial arts and like jiu-jitsu and stuff, like your idols, like the people that you like really like are like, oh my god, like they're a lot more accessible, especially when you're an athlete and like involved in the sport, than I feel like any other like major sport. Like I don't feel like I could just like random like be at a hotel with like football players like and be walking around.
Although we did casually end up meeting and having a like long conversation with a guy that ended up being an Olympic gold medalist in swimming.
Yeah, but that he goes to our church, and you know, shout out to him, like Michael.
Yeah,
but
Michael.
But that like he goes to our church, and
not
I think
Michael Phelps.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, but Olympians is different than like, because Olympic athletes, I've met plenty of Olympic athletes. I'm talking about like professional athletes. Like we've ran into a couple of like professional football players and stuff, but you just kind of casually run into them. It's not like, you know, you could just be like hanging out with and introduced to just random football players like all the time.
Although you did have a friend that was like dating one of the Rams cornerbacks for a while.
Yeah, I did. And he came to my house, my parents' house. So, yeah, but he's kind of a douchebag.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like, I think that's what maybe it's weird. Like you had a weird instance in the locker room here recently where somebody was like, I've never met somebody that was famous before, and you were like, I don't really know how to address that.
Yeah,
like,
and at the jiu-jitsu at the academy after I taught women's class, and a girl was like, oh my god, like you're kind of famous, and I'm like, not really. No, like, and no, I'm just not. Like people in the community of jiu-jitsu know who I am, but I'm not famous by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of things in just generally the culture have shifted a lot. Where, you know, people, I've heard a lot of people have this take, but like the idea that like you won't have another like Michael Jackson or someone like that's like this transcendent type of celebrity, because the way that things are now with the internet and just the attention gets divided among so many things, that you tend to find celebrity in your sort of niche or like whatever types of like areas of interest that you have, but there's no like all-encompassing one.
Because even like the people like on TikTok or Instagram, YouTubers that have like millions and millions of subscribers, it's like there could be somebody who's like legitimately famous on like making like a crap ton of money on Instagram or on like YouTube, and I wouldn't know who they are.
Yeah.
You know, but like they have a huge following and most people know who they are. You know, like a lot of the like beauty influencers that I follow, like you don't know their names, but they have millions and millions of subscribers, and like they're pretty famous by most accounts, like, but in that industry.
Yeah. And, you know, jiu-jitsu really is, like, similar in that way. And I would describe, like, jiu-jitsu athletes as very similar to, like you said, well, that's an Olympic athlete. I've met Olympic athletes before. The accessibility is there because they're normal people.
Yeah.
And, well, they're all normal people. But one of the things that I find interesting about it is that, like, you have both the, like, the cultural phenomenon and the, like, the aspect of like how many followers you have and you know like what people or whatever. But I remember thinking this like 10 years ago when I met Hickson Gracie, because for the first time I was like, oh my god, it's Hickson, you know. And I like got my picture with him and stuff, and I just remember he had like a line that formed behind him at the jiu-jitsu tournament where all these people like wanted to get their picture with him. And then I thought to myself, like, it's funny because he probably could walk into a Starbucks and then like stand in line and no line is forming behind him to get pictures, you know, like
nobody knows who he is.
No, he's just a guy with a like, you know,
Unless
English is clearly his second language, and you know, like they have no idea.
Yeah, which I did see, and I didn't get to talk to this person, but I was in the locker room.
I was gonna bring this up,
and Tekashi 6ix9ine just like walked right in front of me, like he was going to the floor with Sean O'Malley, and I was like, that's Tekashi 6ix9ine.
Dude, you should have been like, snitch.
I mean, I wanted to so bad. I wanted to.
What's he gonna do about it? You know, like
nothing.
Fight you? Maybe he's gonna lose.
Yeah, he's
oh my
little.
God, there'd be no better way to blow up.
Oh my God, that would have been the best thing. I should have started a fight with Tekashi 6ix9ine. That would have been the best thing ever.
Tekashi 6ix9ine gets street bamboloed.
Also, like, how many gangsters would be on my side after that?
Yeah, they'd be like,
if I beat up a snitch. Like, I'm not in a gang, but like, come on, man.
They're like, tell me more about this.
Stitches.
Tell me more about this Jenna Bishop girl. And they're like, well, she's from St. Louis. And they're like, yeah. I'm on board.
Which, speaking of St. Louis, Missouri.
It's a great point.
My fight is not happening.
That's
because I cannot get licensed in the state of Missouri.
And there's please do not message anyone from the state of Missouri.
It's out of their hands. They would love to license me, but because of other people being douchebags in the state and like getting licensed before they should have, and I think that's on on them. But
yeah,
anyhow,
so to make a long story short,
I can't get licensed because I don't have enough experience.
Yeah, they have new regulations in place around first-time pros, and if there was an exception to be made, they'd make it for Jena. They can't. She's gonna go fight pro in another state first, and then hopefully one day get a chance to fight as a pro in Missouri.
Yeah, in my hometown. But that being said, hopefully. So what I've been told so far, I'm still waiting for confirmation on this, but what I've been told is that the next LFA card will be September 24th, and I don't know what state it will be in, but hopefully in a state that doesn't have crazy restrictions on
Arizona
on first-time pros. And so hopefully I can, it's supposed to be same opponent, same, and just in a different state, in a different date. So hopefully in 6 weeks I'll be fighting. That's my goal.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting on confirmation on that.
And that's certainly what we're hoping for.
Because otherwise I'll be crying.
Yeah.
I already cried a lot.
We're going to have to change the name of this podcast for sure if something falls through or something happens. We'll just change it to like ready to be fighting.
No, just we fighting everybody.
And then how we spell everybody is going to be an issue because we're
I
gonna.
don't know. It's
I
gonna
feel like
be
our
like
audience is
it's
divided.
gonna be how Chingy would spell it.
Honestly,
I hope everybody knows who Chingy is.
well, I don't want to guess how Chingy would spell anything, but
ERRRRR
number 9
BODY.
space bar cactus emoji.
Which I started following Chingy on Instagram because I was like,
oh, he's
I
alive.
wonder what he's been up to, and I've been staying up to date on Chingy.
Interesting that he's alive.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't he be?
I don't know.
He's not that old.
He's from St. Louis. I mean, it's a statistics thing, really.
That's true. That's true.
But one of the things I wanted to get into in the podcast, and we got a chance to kind of start off on all the things that we're kind of tying up from previous ones and keeping everybody up to date on your fight career. But something that I feel like would be remiss if we didn't bring up and discuss a little bit is the recent sort of reckoning that jiu-jitsu has had with sexual assault allegations and the full spectrum of what that is and means, everything from like rape to just like a general shittiness from people that are involved in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And I kind of tease this on Instagram. I feel a lot of different ways about it, and I've sort of shifted my thinking on this. I really hate people that are self-righteous. My guard immediately goes up, and I have a disdain for people that sort of like proselytize and sort of like espouse different things. I just think I need to investigate you for whatever
You're hiding something.
Yeah, exactly. So I've always been remiss to like want to speak my mind about this, but it is something where it's like if the people that
well, honestly too though, it's like it's something that you don't speak out against because like then you get ostracized in some sort of way. Like it's not something that people want to talk about or want to acknowledge, and
it's uncomfortable,
especially as a woman. I think that's why people don't talk about it, or like
that's why we haven't talked about it on this podcast. If we're being honest,
yeah. I mean, we've kind of like touched on the subject a little bit here and there, but I think it's a really big problem. Like, and then when major players in the community start to expose it, then that's when I think a lot of it gives people more courage to come out and speak about it.
People.
Yeah. And so I think that it's important to do that. I think it's something that it really bothers me. It bothers me to my core. Like it makes me, I don't know, like it gets me really emotional because I think, I've had so many women come up to me and, being a leader, and I've kind of been in that role my whole career almost, like, and as like I've been a jiu-jitsu instructor, and it bothers me because I've had so many women who have had like sexual abuse or just any kind of like abuse, like from men, particularly, that they come to jiu-jitsu and they use that's like a healing thing for them, like they use jiu-jitsu as a way to heal from that abuse and a way to like empower themselves and to like overcome the situation, because it's like, now I know how to protect myself, now I know how to fight back. And that was something that in that scenario when I was abused, I didn't have those skills or that ability. And so jiu-jitsu can help heal. And I think that's the whole purpose of it. It's a self-defense. It's like at its core, it was created as self-defense, for a smaller person to be able to protect themselves and defend themselves against a bigger attacker, And so I think that's why it really gets me like emotional and gets me mad when I hear all these stories of women and children being taken advantage of and abused by their professors or by other jiu-jitsu practitioners, because it should be a safe space. It should be the place where they can go to escape that and learn a skill to protect themselves in the future.
Yeah, and I think, something that you and I have talked about before, but it's like I dislike the word like empowerment, because I think it's it becomes like an empty, meaningless word a lot of times, because I hear the words like female empowerment a lot, and it's like, yeah, but these are platitudes. Like, saying something doesn't actually empower someone.
Yeah.
Speaking out can, but just like empty words and empty promises don't. But jiu-jitsu in of itself totally can be, right? Like, kind of, you mentioned both the actual very practical application of like defending yourself against the attacker, and then also this sort of like feeling of like development and like learning a sense of like you have some control over something. Where you may not have before. And this is where I got to with it. There's been a couple different instances in my life in different walks, or I guess different facets of it that are unrelated to jiu-jitsu, where I've been exposed to situations where it's like somebody that I knew or was really close to was either affected by or the perpetrator of something. Mm-hmm. And you just look at it and you're like, how did I miss this?
Yeah.
And
I think the thing, and you hear this time and time again with people who are close to the offenders, where they're like, well, I just can't even believe that, he would do that. Like, he was such a good person and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. Like, you can't believe it sometimes, but believe it, because I have been in that same scenario where I'm like, that guy did that. Like, you think you know somebody, and people are really good at hiding their I don't know, the bad part of themselves, like especially predators and people who are kind of like, you get these like kind of sociopaths, like the people who are like sexual predators and like pedophiles and things like that. They don't have the same thinking patterns. They don't have the same like they don't function on the same like plane that the rest of us do.
See, I think they do, and that's where I see the aspects of game theory to their methodology applied the same way that they do to other people, and the way that incentives drive them. You think about somebody that wants to climb the corporate ladder or something like that. Somebody that, like, even if they do it in a completely like I guess ethical way, the goal is to get to the top, right? And so you're maneuvering the whole time.
But what's the goal? But you know what I'm saying?
That's what I'm saying is with these predators, what you have is somebody is like, the goal is to like usurp power, because it's a form of like currency with them. And what is it that they ultimately want? It's like they want that power because there's something that's like.
But I think that's the difference, though. It's like a lot of people. It's not. The goal isn't the power. Like, people. It's a currency. Start in jiu-jitsu just because you are a fan of the sport, you enjoy the sport. But there's people that are messed up in the head that operate differently than the rest of us. And so when they get to that black belt level, they abuse their power. People are going to abuse their power no matter what. But I think it's a whole like different type of person that does it in a way that destroys other people's lives.
Yeah.
And takes something from other people. Like, I think it's different to abuse your power and just kind of be like a jerk to everyone around you because you think you're better than them, and versus like taking someone's innocence, taking someone's something from somebody, and that's why I don't think that they operate on the same level. Like, you and I, like, number one, like, I mean, you're driven, you're successful, you want to be the best at everything that you do, but not because of you want to be more powerful than everyone. Correct. You just want to be better. Like, I want to be the best at everything I do, not because it's not a power thing. Correct. Like, I just want to be the best at what I do, and I want to be successful. Like, that is different than wanting to gain power so you can abuse other people.
I couldn't agree more. And that's kind of my point, is that it's the same sort of drive that you and I have to want to be the best at everything, except it's completely directed at a completely foreign goal, which is to basically get power so that you can take advantage of other people. Yeah. And I think, you and I were talking about this earlier today. This is not unique to jiu-jitsu. I mean,
it's not.
If we want to talk about topical things, you have the governor of New York, what depending, I have no idea. I'm not well read on that situation. I've heard just basically like parody
Apparently
takes.
he's just Italian.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like I won't speak to that, but it's like you have this
No.
taking place in that respect. You definitely see it in the corporate world. I work in the digital media industry. Every media conglomerate.
I mean, that's
every year
we see it
is
everywhere.
getting-
That's why we have the whole Me Too movement, the whole Believe Women hashtag, that kind of thing. Like, it's everywhere, and I think women and children have been like, subjected to this kind of abuse for a long time. And I think there's a lot of things that is bothersome. It's normal. I think if you talk to most women, I don't know, but like all of my friends, all of the women in my life, I know that at some point have been at least made uncomfortable by a man in a certain scenario. So I think for men, it's hard for them to sometimes understand, especially somebody like you're somebody who would like, you don't take advantage of people like that in that same way. You don't, man, woman, child, like you're not that kind of like, you're not a sociopath.
You don't know me.
And so, but like, I think it's hard sometimes for men to understand women and how we feel like in those scenarios. Like and it's very different, sexual abuse versus like sexual harassment or
uncomfortability,
just making
or
you
just
feel uncomfortable, or like different scenarios.
or
like,
even just feeling like a second class citizen, or
yeah,
something
or just
like
made
that.
to feel lesser than. It's like, it's very different. There's like different levels to this thing. But I think and almost every woman that I know has at least made to be feel like lesser than, or had like some kind of harassment thing where by somebody in a
Position
more
of
powerful,
power.
position of power over them. And so I think that's where what bothers me is like a lot of men get like make judgments of like, well, why didn't you like react, or why didn't you say something, or why didn't you do this? And it's like, you don't understand how you feel powerless in that scenario to where you kind of freeze. Like I've had bosses say things to me before that were sexually harassing, and I was like 19, 20 at the time, and these things are being said to me, and I'm just like, that's messed up. But then also like, he's my boss, and then like,
And then you look around and you see the world not reacting.
and nobody reacts to it, and it's just like commonplace, and it's just like, okay, do I just accept this and I move on? But you don't know when you should say something, or when you if you just like brush it off. And I think more than not, like, you should say something.
Yeah.
You should say something. If somebody's making you feel uncomfortable, or like commenting about certain things where you just, I just think if you feel uncomfortable, you should say something.
Yeah, and
If you're not comfortable saying something, try and find a way out of that situation, which is not always easy.
Yeah, and I think this is where I feel like leadership and responsibility are inexorably linked. And this is something where it's like, I started off by saying like, I don't like people that are self-righteous or proselytizing, and I think a lot of people share my sort of disdain for that. I find that like those.
But I do too.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people do, and I think in many cases those among us that do feel that way, that have been exposed to charlatans, are immediately have our guards up, and we fear being that person, being another person to like keep your eye on, because why are they speaking up? Why are they proselytizing this like holier than thou attitude? But I've sort of thought about this differently in the last, I don't know, probably since this kind of recent one, where I started to think about it, and I was like, no, I do need to speak up and say something, because I do feel like I know myself. I've been exposed to you. Every student that you have, that you've ever gotten, that has already done jiu-jitsu before, that has come to your classes or whatever, they all have some kind of story, ranging from like the things that are on the same level as what you're seeing now with the allegations against Fight Sports, the allegedly the Marcel guy. I won't even say his last name because it's like, why give him the press. But yeah, like, so that guy, and him committing sexual assault against somebody that was 16 years old, to, you know, smaller stuff that's like definitely not on the same level as that, but still significant. And seeing that and going, you know, like, that's allowed to occur because enough people aren't sharing and professing, like, outwardly, that that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
And what that ends up looking like is that when that stuff happens, like you said, somebody pops their head up and they're like, is that okay? Is what's happening here okay? And you look around and it doesn't seem like anybody really cares or is paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go, okay, that just must be the way that things are.
Well, I had a conversation with a woman. She was visiting our gym. She's looking for a new place to train. She has...
I know what you're going to talk about.
So she has been in a scenario where, number one, this guy, I know who he is, and he is not a good person. He has been accused of many things here recently that are either just inappropriate behavior with women specifically, and he's not sane. And so one of the things she was saying, though, is like, you know, if he's the professor, he's the black belt, but if he was having a bad day, he would come in and all the students were like, he'd take that out on everybody. And he was very abusive in his words and his manners and everything that he did on the mat, because he would take out his own personal frustrations on the people that were there, like, or on his students. And so for that, like, she just like, I just thought this was normal. Like, I just assumed it was normal because this was her first interaction and this is her first experience with, you know, jiu-jitsu in general. And I'm like, that is not normal. You know, that is not normal by any standard. That is not how it should be. Like, we are at a gym where, you know, Professor Johnny is somebody who I know when he's having a bad day because we have a closer relationship, but he's not going to let the students know that. Like, we all have bad days and we come in and you don't take it out on those people. You leave that at the door and you go on about your life and you teach and you make sure that your students have a good, enjoyable experience because they're paying for a service. They're not paying for you to, like, abuse them because you've had a bad day, you know? And so, and that's like on the, like, low end of the things of, like, it escalates from there. And this guy has definitely escalated those things. From just being, like, mean to his students because he had a bad day to abusive to women in multiple ways. And so I think that's unfortunate because I think a lot of people, they start an academy where they get abused, they get those like really negative experiences, and then they quit. And it should be so much the opposite. Like, yeah. I think that's what bothers me is, like, I understand, like, I don't know. I don't understand it, but, like, I feel like it's acceptable, like, in the world, like, the workforce, all these other things, there's going to be bad people, there's going to be things that, like, happen to you that aren't great, but the Jiu-Jitsu Academy should be, like, a safe haven, and it makes me so angry that there's so many cases of sexual assault, and I think it gets swept under the rug because the people that are either doing this or are the leaders of these gyms are revered in such a way as a legend in the sport or as a whatever, like, in the sport that, like, we can't tarnish their image because of this bad thing that they did, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like, there's a time to separate. Like, I've realized that there's a lot of times where I can separate the person's ability in jiu-jitsu versus who they are as a person, but we can't separate those things when they're abusing other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's, like, the thing that, you know, I was telling somebody earlier this week, but I'm like, the jiu-jitsu community is so good at, like, calling out and destroying people who have fake black belts. Like, the moment you find out about this person had gave themselves a black belt and they're like fake in the sport, we will jump all over that and we will destroy that person's life and make them feel like ruin everything about them. We need to do the same thing that we do for fake black belts as we do for sexual predators in the sport. And I don't understand why it's not even, it should be greater if it's a sexual predator versus somebody who, just had a fake belt.
Yeah.
Because they're not doing that much harm.
And I think that's where we really do need to be able to separate the varying aspects of each case is unique in of itself, because I think what happens is the community and also people have a tendency to be like, well, this is like this scenario or this is like that scenario. No, they're all different. Each scenario is different. You mentioned that jiu-jitsu sort of has one of these every few years where it's like everybody pays attention. It was the, I won't even say the name, but a U.S.-based Maryland instructor had kind of a mass exodus from the school.
I will say it. Lloyd Irvin's team. Because...
Allegedly.
No, it was not allegedly. It was a Team Lloyd Irvin thing where those kids from his school raped a student in a parking garage. It was on video. And that kid, that Nick guy, I don't even know his last name, is still practicing jiu-jitsu and is trying to get around. And that is BS. That is not allowed. These people shouldn't, we should know their names so that when they come to our schools, we're like, no, you're not allowed here. You shouldn't be allowed to practice the sport anymore. Yeah. Anywhere. I don't care who I offend. Lloyd Irvin was accused of a rape scenario, and many of not only the kids who abused one of his students, but there's other people on that team that were accused of assault and rape in different scenarios. So I'm not saying that that team is the only team that has it's not just a team problem. Right now, the fight sports is they're under all the scrutiny, and there's other cases coming out. This is not unique to one team. This is happening in the sport all over the place. Claudia Duvall had the same thing. What was that, a year ago? Or I don't know. And it's that happened with De La Riva, and then she accused him of all these things, and then it just kind of it was a thing for a month, and then nobody talks about it anymore. Yeah. Because, he created this whole guard,
Yeah. And I think, and it's then, it's the same thing that's happened to women throughout history where it's well, it's a he said, she said thing. But the reason why that happens is because, you mentioned earlier, it's a lot of these women, they end up quitting, and who's to blame them? Why wouldn't you? It's a miracle that they don't quit. And it brings to light something that, I experienced in a different facet of life. I mentioned earlier, where unbeknownst to me, there was someone that I admire a lot, somebody that I've watched female develop a lot as a person since she was younger, and found out later on that someone that we both worked with was basically abusive to them. Won't go into any other details or anything like that, but specifically, it was amazing to me that the person basically just didn't quit, didn't leave, didn't abandon everything because of it. And in that light, she was able to bring out something that no one else was aware of, or at least myself in a leadership position wasn't aware of. And because of that, we were able to solve that. And systemically, I think everybody collectively inside of the organization felt more emboldened to come out and say something if something like that was to occur again. And I think it's not until that happens, until you feel like the people around me have got my back and they're not going to cover for this person, or the community's not going to cover. You mentioned to me prior to this, growing up early on in life, you were very involved in the church. You went to Bible school for a year, and you saw a lot of that where it's people would cover for the pastor's kid or for the pastor themselves or something like that. And even if that's not the case, even if the community would have your back, the fact that these things don't get brought to light, people assume a lot of times that someone won't, and it's not until everyone collectively voices the fact that you're I really like the term "time's up" much better than "me too." "Me too" sounds oh yeah, me too. And
Like,
not all these things are equal.
I have not been sexually assaulted. I've been harassed. I've been in situations that make me feel uncomfortable, but I have not been abused in a way that a lot of these women have. And so I don't want to
cheapen those experiences.
Yes, cheapen that for them. Like, my trauma is not the same as your trauma. Like, we don't have
even two people that experience very significant trauma that's greater than either of us have ever had to deal with. It's like, to even say that those two are like, oh,
I just don't want to
too.
downplay anybody's like scenario, and I don't want to say like, I don't know. Things happen, and it's really hard for people to talk about them, and I even understand not wanting to talk about it just because it's hard for you. I think that's why I get mad when people are like, well, why didn't you say something when it happened? Well, like, maybe I just wasn't ready to talk about it, because like sometimes when you have a traumatic incident, it's like you need to process it before you can even talk about what actually happened. It's like, what just happened to me? I don't know even how to like explain it, or like, is this normal? Is this like, am I like crazy? Whatever. You go through all these things because like it was really traumatic. And so everybody has to talk about things at their own time, at their own pace. And so you can't say, well, this is like,
this is what I would have done. Because you're thinking,
you don't know what you would have done.
And
it didn't happen to you.
You're also taking a logical approach to it, to where it's like, you and I were talking about this before as well. It's obviously something we've talked about a lot, but like, it's like when somebody gets out of a cult, where it's like you're so close to something, you don't really realize how crazy life was until you're out of it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing where it's like you take this time to like process what's happened, and then you realize like, wait a minute, like this isn't normal, this isn't okay. It's same thing with people in abusive relationships. If it was that simple, or just like that cut and dry, you would never have a woman that's like basically in an abusive relationship, because you're like, the guy hit you, why wouldn't you just leave? Like, that's what makes sense, right?
I mean, I worked with a girl a long time ago who was in a really, I mean, that's why we like, like this battered woman syndrome. It's like you keep going back to your abuser because they make you feel some type of way, to where they either scare you into thinking you can't talk about it or can't leave, or they make you feel like, well, they actually love me. Like, they just don't, like, this is just, they don't know how to show it properly, or they mess with your mind in a way.
It's my fault.
Yeah, or make you believe it's your fault. And so they mess with your mind in this way to where you don't even see what you're in. They make you like crazy. And so I think, but the girl that I work with, and it's like, she wound up, this guy kept beating her, and she would come into work and she would be bruised. She'd be missing chunks of hair because they got into a fight, and it was like really bad abusive situation. Like, I mean, he'd punch her in the face, he'd rip her hair out, like bad situation. And then, she came into me and she's pregnant by this guy, and now she's like freaking out, and she's like all upset, and she's beating herself up more than anything for going back to the situation. And I'm not there to judge her. That's the thing, is I think that we can't victim blame. We can't judge these women for how they respond to these things, because I haven't been in that specific situation. Like, everybody's very different, and like, you're not going to act rationally in those scenarios because it's not a normal situation. And I think, unfortunately, it's more normal than we think, because it happens more regularly than we think. But
the fact that all the women that come to your classes that have been at other schools, like, it'd be rare to find someone that didn't basically have some kind of story that was on this spectrum of like inappropriate, what I mean?
But I think the thing that it makes it so hard, especially in this sport, for women to come forward about, is that they all get hushed. They all get told to like, well, don't tell anybody about this. Like, we're going to make this is going to be something that like we'll handle internally, but like, don't make it a deal, and like these men, these abusers get, they are, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like they get taken care of like by their people, It all gets brushed under the rug so that they're not made to look bad, because it makes everybody around them look bad. And instead of guys and the people in power, like the people in charge in these leadership roles, taking like that and like taking a real stance on it and actually, there's crazy girls out there who are going to make up stories and like, so I don't think that you should.
You've been exposed to that
and
as
I've
well?
been exposed to that. So I'm definitely not one that says like, you should believe every story that you hear, because I think there's a lot of women who want attention and they know that that's an easy way to get it. And so, I'm not saying that that's a scenario going on right now. I would say what if you need to be in an environment where like you feel comfortable going to the people in leadership roles in the authority figures and like letting them know what's going on. And I think if you are a leader or authority figure, you should be like, okay, whether or not, if those take those charges, those allegations very seriously and do your due diligence, get to the bottom of the story, and like the person being accused should be removed from like any like dealings
capacity to execute that same sort of behavior.
Yes, instead of covering up for them. And I think that's the thing that bothers me is there's so many men that are legends in this sport that I've heard stories of them abusing. And I think the whole community knows that this person sexually assaulted a woman or one of his students. And I mean, I'm talking about people who have been like, I mean, legends.
Yeah.
And
the thing is like enough people know,
and people know about this, but somehow it doesn't get talked about. It gets hushed. And like, why? Why are we protecting them?
Because I think one of the things you have to be really careful of, and this is something that I thought about this the other day. There's 5 people in my entire life where no matter what, I got their back. Like, no matter what I would hear about them, I would have their back. But you're one of those people, and then 3 of the other people are my mom, dad, and sister. Yeah. And I've got one other. And the reason is because there's one other person. It's funny. He said something really profound to me when we were talking about a mutual, I guess, like peer acquaintance in jiu-jitsu that had been accused, and subsequently it's verified, and there's I think enough evidence here that they did something very just wrong in general, but it's in the same mode. And the person was not only were they a jiu-jitsu professor, but they were also a cop, and they were like fired from the police force. And we joked around, it's like you can shoot a black man in the back in the middle of the day and they'll just put you on leave, but to actually get fired, it's like they've got some kind of evidence you did something wrong. And this is someone that he was talking to other people that were still in and around that person, and they were like, well, this is actually what happened, and I think, and did you hear, and did you find, and he's like, whoa, why are we giving this person the benefit of the doubt? Like, you don't even know these details. Like, why would you immediately jump to defending this person? Like, I know, like, sometimes somebody's character and you want to defend them or whatever. But in this case, it's someone where it's like, clearly we know enough to know that the person they pretend to be, or the person that they acclaim to be, is
not who they were.
Is not who they are. So why would you, in any instance, give them the benefit of the doubt and just assume and make these excuses?
When you know that they've deceived you in some way, like, why are you going to give them any benefit of the doubt? Because they've deceived you by like pretending to be something that they're not. So it's like, if you can pretend to be that person, like, I can't say that you haven't done these terrible things
it's
too.
Like, I don't know this other person, but I also know that I, like, all of a sudden, like, I can't give you the benefit of the doubt. I think that's one of the things we all have to do collectively, is realize that this is a fact of how predators operate. Is they put themselves in position to where they can be above reproach. They build, this is a defense system that they've built around them, so that the people that are in and around them will have their back and defend them, despite the fact that, like, there's no reason for them to. And I think that's where it's like, you hear something or something like that. You mentioned like the legends of the sport or whatever that a lot of people know. It's like, instead of being like, well, I heard this or I heard that, there's 2 sides to every story. The difference is the reaction should be like, has anyone found out more about this? Like, what's going on with that? Like, get the details, because that's where all of a sudden people will realize it's not commonplace. It's not okay. Time is up. And
I think, especially with our sport, a lot of these, I'm not saying that all the offenders are Brazilian, but like, because it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of Brazilians over here in the States, and I've seen this happen before, but like, they like leave the country so they don't get like legal repercussions on them. Like, they like flee before anything can happen, which is, I think, I think it sucks because I was trying to like find more information on like what actually happened legally. This guy, that Marcel guy, like admitted that he slept with the 16-year-old woman or girl and child, and
pleaded insanity.
Like that was he was trying to plead insanity, but I didn't see what charges. And then I saw that he went back to Brazil so that he didn't have to face any jail time. And it's like, that's something that happens. There's another case of a jiu-jitsu practitioner that got accused of rape and then like left the country, but then went into rehab and all this other stuff. And it's like, I feel like what made me angry is I was trying to find out what happened in those things to see like if there's like any validity to the story or not. Like, and then there's nothing that happened. Like, you can't find it out, and I don't know. And it's like, why are we not?
We can root these things out faster is if, as a community, you start asking these questions. Like, I think that's
stop covering up for these people.
And I think that we all have a responsibility to be able to figure out like what is going on with that. Like, be curious, because even if you're like, well, it's not my business, it's all of our business. Because here's the thing: is somebody. If you're listening to this podcast, there's somebody that you know, or you've been close to a situation like this in some facet of your life, guaranteed.
Yeah.
And that mere fact speaks to you are either observing or you're taking part. And sometimes those things are interchangeable. And the reason is because these things are facilitated by passivity. The reason why you have totalitarianism and you have like egomaniacal people that are able to gain power is because good people stand by and watch it happen. And the least that we can all do is start asking questions and start rooting these things out so that it's not allowed to like basically grow and fester. It's like having something that's dirty and knowing that it's dirty underneath something, but knowing that no one sees it. So you're like, I'm not really interested in cleaning it right now. We all need to just go and look, even if we're not the one that's going to have to clean it up.
Yeah. I think that we can bring light to it. And I think that, if you're somebody that has been abused or is like being abused, like, know that there are people that will listen to you and that will take that seriously. And I'm one of those people. Like, I don't know. I know a lot of people. I know, like, I don't know. I just want to help. So, like, if, reach out to me on whatever platform you can and, like, let me know if you're in these situations, and I'll do whatever I can to make sure that you get some sort of justice.
Yeah.
Like, or like you're just heard. I think that a lot of people, like, they want to be heard. And, my default is to just be there and be a sounding board, or like I'm not afraid of like losing anything for speaking out, because I'd rather lose everything knowing that I did the right thing than like be afraid to not and be silent and let other people get abused more.
Yeah. And I think that I think you bring up a really good point, which is like, if you don't feel like there's people around you, or you see something, or you think there's somebody in your life that that is going through something like this, and you're like, I don't think that they know, or I personally don't know of someone that I can really reach out to expose this, then reach out to us, because we'll expose them.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of other women in the sport, like, speaking out here recently since these, like, new, this stuff has been brought to the light. Mo is doing a really good job, but I think, I don't agree with a lot of the things he does, but, like, he's doing a great job of, like, exposing this atrocity. And, the guys at, like, BJJ World
TV,
they're, like, doing a good job of, like, I think presenting the case from a very unbiased.
Here's the information.
Here's just giving the information, like putting it out there, exposing that thing, and I think that's what, we're talking about it now. And there's other stories, like since this happened, there's been 2 other women that have already spoke out within the, that organization alone that have had problems. So I know that there's a lot more, and know that, I hope that if you hear this and you have been a victim, or you are a victim, like reach out to me, or to, there's a lot of other females, black belts in the community that are willing to help. And I know men too, but I think sometimes it's a little bit easier to like reach out to another woman because it's like a little bit more understanding. But I want to do my best to make sure that these guys don't have the opportunity to do this to another person.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And we'll leave it at that. And we'll end the podcast on that note, because I think it's a good one too. But yeah, I know it got serious through the majority of it. We kind of started off on a lot of fun things, but this is a topic that it's like, it would be nice to be able to like laugh and joke about it. And there's aspects of it that in, smaller circles and things like that, there's things that we can talk about and kind of make light of to kind of laugh through the pain. But in this instance, I think it's something that deserves the kind of respect that I think the tone that we struck. So I'll leave it there. Is there anything else you want to share with anybody, Jenna?
No, not really.
All right. Well, we want to thank everybody for listening to Not Fighting. We will change the name of the podcast if I
don't get a fight soon.
But hopefully we'll have a new announcement on the next fight date. Jenna mentioned September 24th. That's the date they've given us. So hopefully it'll be in a state that,
allows me to fight.
Loose with regulations. But no, in all seriousness, can't wait to see a fight. And
Yeah.
We'll leave
Thanks
it there.
for listening.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.